Thank you. Kia ora. I'm going to be talking about how we can do better integrating tangata whenua cultural aspects into stormwater. I was fortunate to have worked together with Ruru from Te Aitanga Amahaki, a tūranga iwi, on the Maori campus with support from Gisborne District Council, particularly from David Wilson. And this presentation is about that. We all know that a key issue facing New Zealand is the degradation of our waters. While this is well documented through Western science monitoring and reporting, our social and cultural connections with water have also been eroded, and that is less well captured. While this is for a number of reasons, one aspect that definitely plays a role is the fact that we may not be very good at integrating these social and cultural aspects into our decision-making and business as usual activities. So I asked the question, is it a case of not having the right tools and processes available, or are we not good enough at implementation? And maybe we need a little bit of self-reflection in that respect. Looking at a planning context, we can see that matauranga Maori, and other cultural aspects related to tangata whenua are actually quite well catered for in planning tools and legislation. Just to mention a key bit of the legislation, we have provisions in the Resource Management Act, the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, the Coastal Policy Statement, and in our regional plans. In Tairāwhiti, we have the Tairāwhiti Resource Management Plan, and that has some very good objectives and policies on how we better integrate these aspects. So there is a really strong case for authentic and meaningful integration of these aspects into decision-making and in our everyday work activities. There are a lot of reasons why this may not have been so good to date. And one of those is that it is difficult to translate mostly non-scientific concepts into measurable things, measurable attributes that can be evaluated or considered on a similar basis to Western science attributes. And most of our systems and processes are set up to cater for Western science attributes. It is easy to measure the concentration of heavy metals in stormwater. It is much more difficult to measure the effect that those concentrations have on the community. In putting together the Maori Compass, we therefore actively try to find a way to bring two very different approaches together by enabling them to be presented through a common and not too dissimilar platform. So if we do that, we really are on a pathway to paddling in the same waka and being able to work together. And we can look at it in the traditional way of looking at activity, effect, mitigation, and residual effect in terms of that approach. And this makes it much easier for an equitable and equal consideration in consent processes and partnering better. In doing this work and considering stormwater, we've also thought about how aspects of Maori and matauranga Maori fit into what is accepted as good and progressive practice in stormwater, such as water-sensitive urban design. What we found is that tangata whenua principles, including tikanga, kawa, Maori, they actually very closely reflect what we are nowadays trying to achieve in stormwater management. So they're different but very similar. Concepts such as preserving and protecting connections with natural resources, protecting natural assets, using natural processes for contaminant removal, not terraforming, but rather keeping the natural character and landform, allowing for full range of use of natural assets, and promoting contact between water and Papatuanuku, supporting infiltration and integrating multiple aspects into our designs. So a lot of aspects are the same, and they actually support each other. So the Maori compass is an indicator tool for Maori that we can use to look at those issues. It can be used in various ways and for various purposes. It is obviously not the only tool, and there are a lot of other great tools also out there. It's also not an absolute measure of Maori, but it's very important to understand that it is an indicator that we can use in a bigger assessment. And the tool itself is supported by a very detailed engagement process. On this slide, you can see a picture of us all engaging. This was during the COVID lockdown, and we were able to use this tool really effectively with tangata whenua, even though we were all Zooming through that process. Just to summarize the key aspects of the tool, it is a people-centered approach. It is about partnering with whānau, marae, community, hapu, and iwi. It's making sure that what we do meets tangata whenua's needs, and that is specific to that to the group that is affected. We follow customs and practices that are required in tangata whenua engagement and working through technical aspects. And it has an extensive consultation process, including active participation, really involving the community. And we integrate local and indigenous knowledge supported by Western science. A key functionality of the tool is flexibility and versatility. It is a semi-quantitative tool, so we've tried to score and measure some of these hard to measure things. And this was a very challenging task. Key to understanding what the Maori compass does is understanding that it is about applied aspects of water. It is about what we do. It's not about chemistry and data. As an example, rather than use concentrations of contaminants or measurements of stormwater flow, when we describe the state of the environment, now we rather score how the concentrations and flows affect the community. So working down from the community, not up from water quality and other measurements that are easy to measure through scientific process. The scoring section of the tool is made up of robust and repeatable questions. And those questions are scored through various Likert scales. There are 3 sections, those being people, water, and land. This slide shows the attributes for the people section. And as you can see, in the second column, we have attributes, and in the third column, we have a number of sub-attributes. I haven't listed them here because that's would be a very large, unreadable document. But there is a very robust process with various levels that one has to go through when putting together the scores. It is a really in-depth and thorough process. This is the water section, again with attributes and sub-attributes. And finally, the land section, also with attributes and sub-attributes. The water and land sections integrate Western science indicators of Maori, whilst the people section is mostly about non-Western science type attributes. This is an example of the outcomes. As you can see, we have numeric scores for different scenarios. In this case, we have the present state, which is scenario 1. You can see that on the slide. And we compare that to the state after an activity. To have a score for after an activity obviously requires a degree of prediction, but this is no different to predictions that are made when one goes through conventional Western science impact assessment processes. So we have to predict what happens after we do an activity. What we can then do is we can get a numerical difference between the states. Obviously, we recognize that one cannot measure Maori to a decimal point. I want to make it very clear. But what this is about showing where there's change, the magnitude of the change, and the direction of the change. So we don't need to go into decimal points, but we use those to be able to quantify the change. The outputs can be displayed as graphs, and this is an example of a recent project we used the tool in. This is a project on wastewater overflows. And if you look at the section on the graph on tangata whenua, so that's right on the left-hand side of the screen, beneath the heading called freshwater, you can see how scores improve, moving from red to gray to orange and then to blue. This was a project about improving wastewater overflows in 3 stages. So that's why you can see the change is positive. So we move up in scores as we move from red to gray to orange to blue. So that's why the change is positive in this case, because the activity was an improvement project. Obviously, if the effects are negative, then we could see a decrease in the scores. This slide shows some dashboards we've developed, and we've created these for simply displaying the outcome. We find them to be great engagement tools for discussion and for displaying very clearly how things change due to an activity. So in this case, we're comparing a current activity to an activity after mitigation. And as you can see, the orange bars increase significantly because we have been able to address a number of tangata whenua concerns through the tool. Considering stormwater applications, we have used this tool in a stormwater wetland project, and this is an example on this slide. And this is a wetland project that we are currently rolling out in Tairāwhiti. By using the tool, we have been able to integrate the tangata whenua and community element into this project. Let's go back. I moved slides too quickly there. For example, to improve tangata whenua connections to the water, project planting and maintenance is being undertaken by local iwi, as will be future monitoring. So we are recognizing their role as kaitiaki. We've also included an amphitheater that will hopefully draw in the community to a great extent. And then the addition of practical elements such as eel houses will hopefully improve understanding. And all these aspects, which are not Western science aspects, they all improve the Maori of that water body. The tool can be used for many different things, and we can also use it for stormwater structure or catchment plans. We have to date used it in the Taruheru structure plan, and we're using it to develop concept alternatives from a matauranga Maori and a Maori perspective. If I go straight to before I move to the next slide, just to let you know that the concepts I'm about to describe on the structure plan, these can also be downscaled to the consent level. This is a worked example of a structure plan we're currently producing. It's a draft of some potential stormwater wetland locations which will form part of the overall stormwater management approach. It only includes stormwater aspects. And now the value of the Maori compass comes into play, in that it also allows us to apply the cultural and social lens to this project. And we will be looking at how best we can cater for the people, land, and water attributes in the tool when we progress the structure plan. So we can add in all those layers that we spoke about before on improving connections to the water, enabling tangata whenua to better perform their role as kaitiaki, and so on. Ultimately producing a structure plan that meets multiple needs. So I've described some examples of where it can be used in stormwater, and alluded to some other applications. But the key to the tool is that it integrates flexibility and versatility and can have wide application. So just for completeness, I'll just run through a few other things it can be used for, and it can include input into iwi management plans, regulatory planning processes, project of varying scales. The beauty of the tool is that you can upscale or downscale as needed. Community programs. So while it can be used in consent processes, it can be used by schools and other community programs and educational activities. Monitoring, it's a great tool to start looking at cultural monitoring because it has specific aspects that can be monitored and measured, and it can be used to set priorities and program schedules. And that takes me to the end of the presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that the tool and the concepts you've spoken about in the presentation will be of help to you in doing your work. Thank you very much again. How long was that? 16. Is that too short? I was trying to get through it. Yeah. All right. Well, that just means more question time, eh?